And because I think I'm interested in evolution, I think in that way, that also put me in a good position once I got into art, then to say, well, what is actually the front edge of art? What are people really thinking about in the arts philosophically? What are they manifesting? It's not one thing. I mean, we don't live in a period now where art is one movement like it was when you had Expressionism or Impressionism or whatever. It's all and everything now. We live in this big soup. But I did identify the areas that I'm really interested in. So I'm really interested in the environment. That's been consistent, and ecosystems, and our relationship to it. But I'm also interested in it separate from us. I'm interested in this idea, can we ever be something other than anthropocentric? Humanity is damaging the thing it lives on. You know, what species does that and lives to tell about it? I think climate change denial is treasonous at this point. Why are we denying it at the highest levels of office in this country? Pathetically so, by the way. We're a bizarre species. And I think one of the reasons we have humor is to sort of deal with that and accept it, because I mean, you get in this like this area of, you know, there is no such thing as things should be like this or things should be like that. It's bizarre. And so I think humor, particularly in art, not just from the case of not taking itself too seriously, but it's so central to us. And I think in the past, you know, and this has been broken up very thoroughly in the last decades, but taking things too seriously or compartmentalizing or manifestos or these kind of things, it's all kind of a bit ridiculous, you know. I mean, I still like the idea that maybe, you know, we have some ethical standards, but maybe even that is ridiculous. I don't know. Well, I've always been interested in art. I mean, I was interested in art as a kid. I suppose what curious kid isn't interested in art and dinosaurs and all the rest of it? The way I grew up, I wasn't around artists. My dad was in publishing, but I wasn't around artists. I didn't know it as a viable way to be. And I also had to earn a living, so I didn't pursue it early, but I was interested. I mean, I went to museums. I loved surrealism. I loved Hieronymus Bosch. I also always loved music, which I would put in the same territory. I really went out into the world to learn. I mean, my impetus coming out of really from university on was to explore and learn and see the world. And the thing that I was really interested in seeing because of my interest in nature was the last groups on Earth that were really living in a truly primitive, archaic way with nature. And I ended up spending, a decade in Southeast Asia, but I spent every winter about 2 months for 8 years with one of the last Stone Age tribes on Earth in Indonesia. So I was living with a shaman. They were bark loincloths, tattooed, bows and arrows, highly intelligent. And so that was my early exploration. And so I'll get back to how I got to be an artist. But I really felt, even at that time, looking back with you know, the clarity that hindsight is, which is questionable. But you know, I look back at that period, and I always thought I wasn't ready to offer anything as an artist. I mean, in hindsight, you know, I was preparing to be the artist I am now. There's no question about it, and I know that more than ever because I keep going back to these things I learned when I was with the shaman in the rainforest or a number of other groups. I mean, I lived kind of out in the wilds for the best part of a decade based in Tokyo. You know, I'd come back to Tokyo in the neon and that type of thing and rest up and develop film, and then I was going out to very wild places. So then I would say coming forward, I was a photojournalist, photographer, and I had quite a number of books and did shows. And then really around 2000, I was monkeying around in my dark room with photograms, which is making photographs without cameras in the most basic sense, and total wet darkroom analog. And I discovered a process, really light bulb going off kind of thing, which I then started to develop. It's now called Carbon. There's a book on it, and a show, but that led me into a territory of really kind of a high resolution fiction is what those are. They look like scientific images. In many ways, they're really drawings. But then I really started to get deep myself with these questions that are art questions. What is the photograph? What is perception? All these type of things. I started to go off in this direction. And even though I still travel fairly often to wild environments, then at the same point, I started to get very interested in the opportunities that the digital revolution offered, in all the gear opportunities, the capture, the manipulation, all that offered. I mean, I was a kind of curious individual that said, wait a minute, I can do that, and I can do, you know, so I started doing that. And so then I transitioned from this life as a photojournalist, where you're really looking at other people's cultures and ways of being and learning through the lens, literally, to this point where I was looking inside myself and these strange images that I was producing. And that really dropped me into a territory that can only be called being an artist. So, I mean, I played with all kinds of materials. I mean, I explored painting because I wanted to know what it was to paint. I mean, this is one of the things that I've recognized with myself, is I've dabbled in a lot of things to know what it is to do it. In other words, you know, I've done some live music shows where I orchestrated and played live because I wanted to know what it was to be a live musician. Yeah, I mean, one of the seeming opportunities with carbon as a material, which it is, it begins as a material, and then traditional to photography, there, in a sense, light is added. In this case, it's with a very high resolution scanner. And then it could be both animated, brought into motion, depth could be added to it. And then it was an opportunity really to create a world out of this mineral, which is, you know, there is actually this very interesting question somewhere inherent to that idea of, you know, how did life begin on Earth? Where, you know, is it panspermia? What is it? And so in many ways it was an artistic process thinking about that, or certainly influenced by that idea of, you know, we start with this material, carbon, the building block of life. We know that. Water, essential to life. I mean, that's what's in that emulsion along. Oh, that's pretty good. So carbon's throw it in because some ideas.
No, please do.
One of the things that's been interesting in shows recently, including what the Rocket Brain's been in, but let's call them sculptural pieces, physical pieces, is that I find that the viewers often want to touch the work, and I like when viewers touch the work. It's a challenge for the museum guards because you're not supposed to touch other works. But I was speaking with a scientist at Bell Labs who's looking at touch for haptics. And so they've been doing these fMRI scans of people touching or not touching, and this research about touch and the connection you have when you touch something is orders of magnitude beyond what it is when you don't touch something. So one, I like to touch the works when I make them, but I really like when the audience touches the work. And it's one of the opportunities with making physical works that a photograph under glass doesn't have, and typically a painting doesn't have either, right? You're not supposed to touch paintings in museums or galleries. So that's part of my process, both on the level of making, but also on the level of bringing the audience in. As I hope people are touching the things I'm making. Good. Yeah, I mean, we're close to wrapping.
Collectors here that I want to turn the work on for.
Great. I think we're good, aren't we?
Yeah. If you have nothing.
Todd, do you want us like 5 minutes and we're, or can these guys be cleaning up? And do you want me or no?
I don't need you. I need to turn everything on. So.
Oh, you want to turn the show on? Go for it. Are we good?